Good evening and welcome to this Chopin competition studio. My name is Wojciech Bońkowski and it is my delight to welcome experienced pianist Szymon Kończal in tonight's studio. Welcome, Szymon.
Hello, Szczepan. Okay.
You took part in so many piano competitions that my first question is fairly obvious, even if it sounds banal. How does it really feel to get on stage at a competition as big as the Chopin? What's on your mind when you go there? And it's not just a normal concert, is it?
Of course, it's not a normal concert, but I think most of the pianists are trying to treat it as a normal concert, and I don't really know what I felt when going onto the stage, but I think I was trying to not to remember that I'm going on the stage to play during a Chopin competition. But, well, it's not very easy to forget. So, when I was younger, I think it was much more emotional and it made me feel much more nervous when I was trying to participate in competitions. Then, when I got more experienced, sometimes it was a bit easier. But every time was different, I think. Sometimes I was feeling like, well, I'm prepared. I think I know what I'm going to play. I feel comfortable because of the piano, because of the acoustics, because of everything which is around, because of the weather maybe sometimes. And I didn't really feel that I'm under such a pressure. But sometimes it was very difficult.
Mm-hmm. Can you at all enjoy the music, or are you really focusing more on the sports aspect of the competition when you play?
I think, as I said, I tried to forget. I think the sport aspect is very difficult, but we shouldn't think about it. And sometimes when we are already on the stage and we are starting, well, the music is just flowing and we are no longer sportsmen.
You mentioned an evolution in your approach to this, so it's interesting because at this year's Chopin competition we have got pianists who are just 18 years old, and then we've got people also approaching 30 years old, same age as you are. Do you think it makes a major difference starting a competition at age 18 compared to age 30?
I think it's a big difference, but I think we should ask those people who are trying for the next time, and especially those who were here when they were 18 and who are here now when they are 28, let's say. How did they feel it for the first and for the second time? Well, I personally didn't want to go through it again, so maybe I escaped somehow. But, well, during other competitions, I think I was just more experienced and I was more sure about some pieces in my program, and I was just felt more confident. But sometimes when I didn't have enough time to prepare, or I just didn't feel the circumstances comfortable, it was not so good. So maybe for some of the contestants now it's easier to participate for the second time because they already know how it looks like. But for some of them probably it's even more difficult because they want more and they would like to play better, to be higher, let's say. And I think for them it can be also much more difficult. Of course, they are more mature, they are more experienced. Sometimes it's more like a normal recital for them. But also it can be.
A pianist once told me the Chopin competition is best done when you are 18 because you are conscious of absolutely nothing. Then you just go on the stage and play. The older you are, the more stressed you feel.
Probably there is some truth in it, especially when we look through the history of the Chopin competition. We will see that most of the winners were quite young. Of course, maybe it is somehow connected with the fact that we're only to play one composer. And, well, when I'm thinking about those young pianists winning the Chopin competition and only one composer to play, focusing just on one style, maybe I'm thinking, well, it will be strange. It's not so difficult.
Mm-hmm. So you think it's easier to play the works of just Chopin instead of playing a mixed recital with works by different composers?
Maybe sometimes for me it was like this. It was like that. But I think most pianists would disagree. I think I heard many opinions that it's very difficult to play only one composer. It's better to change something because you can also show that you have different kind of emotions. But I think in Chopin's music there are really different emotions, and it's not such a big problem maybe.
Mm-hmm. How do you feel the thing about playing the works of young Chopin and old? Because this can happen even during a single recital like today. You could play an etude from Opus 10 and then the Fantasia or the Ballade in F minor. So these are two really very different styles, even though it's just one composer.
Of course it is, but I think every piece is quite different. And every piece tells us another story. And, well, is it only the fact that it's young Chopin or old Chopin? I don't think so. I think it's just about the character of a particular piece.
As a pianist, you studied with some very distinguished professors, and incidentally, some of them are now in the jury of the Chopin competition. I mean, Dank Tyson, for example, or Andrzej Jasiński. When you had classes with them, did they ever offer advice that was specifically geared at a competition? Did they say, if you play this at a competition, it's probably better if you use this dynamics instead of others?
I didn't have a long relationship with any of those people, so maybe I didn't experience that kind of tips how to play during this particular competition. But, well, maybe during longer relationships, that kind of things can happen. But I think during master classes, they are just focusing on music. And I think we shouldn't think too much about a particular competition. We should think about developing ourselves. And I think most of those people who are on the juries of the big competitions think this way. Mm-hmm. And they are not only giving us some points how to do it because some other people will think that if you play like this, it will be better. I think it's not so important. But
nonetheless, the preparation is very important when you run the Chopin competitions, and I'm sure you remember also doing this with your teacher, preparing for the competition. So what is the strategy? There must be a strategy, things that you need to remember. What are the most important things? Is your professor just telling you, just be yourself, just play? I'm sure it's much more complicated than that.
Well, it's of course much more complicated, and well, it wouldn't be a good lesson if he, maybe it would be, but but if he only says be yourself, it wouldn't be good, because we wouldn't try different things. We wouldn't try different ideas. I think it's very important to sometimes to learn new ideas and to combine, to compare, to try different things. Well, it's obvious that there usually is some strategy for a particular competition, but I don't really remember any conscious way of doing strategy for the Chopin competition for myself. It was just obvious from the beginning that I will be trying. I don't have any ideas what would be the particular strategy. Of course, we have usually, when we are before a big competition, we have very long and good period of preparations, and it's the best period for us because we can be developing ourselves, and we can think about ourselves as good pianists. We can think about music. We can devote to it. But what I wanted to say, I don't know.
Now, what about programs? Because, you know, the choice of program is really vital to a good recital at a competition. So how do you approach that? We could see today that there were different strategies from different pianists. Some of them started with a quiet, calm pieces like a nocturne, and then built up the momentum to finish with a large work, virtuoso work. Or do you rather start with an impressive piece just to wake everybody up in the audience?
It really depends on particular pianist. For me, it was also depending on the particular program. I mean, when I felt comfortable with some piece, I was usually thinking about starting with it or finishing with it. And I think most of the pianists today also did the same. I mean, beginning with the nocturne is quite usually seems to be quite easy because we don't have to be very sporty at the beginning. We want to touch the keyboard, we want to listen to the sound, we want to listen to the reverb and that kind of things.
So you see, there is a strategy.
Yeah, it's backstage strategy. It's real. Yeah, and after they were usually playing etudes, which is the probably most when
most
we think,
stressful,
yeah,
yes, most
probably
stressful.
most stressful for most of the pianists. And then they are finishing with a bigger piece with saying much more, telling much longer story.
Okay, I know you're very specific about the choice of piano, including at a competition. So could you develop on this? What makes a good piano to use at a situation like the Chopin competition?
I think it's one of the most important moments. For me, it was always one of the most important moments during the competition, to choose a good piano. Of course, I can't say what it really means, good piano. It's of course comfortable, but first of all, I was always looking for a kind of inspiration. It's just like finding a friend with whom we are going to spend some time and to go through maybe dangerous moments, maybe fantastic moments. We will see. And I think it's quite near to choosing a good person to go through the competition. So for me, it's never a kind of choosing a brand. For me, it was always just a particular piano which makes me feel better, which sounds in a way I really like. It inspires me. It sometimes changes the interpretation, let's say.
Now, from a pianist's point of view, when you are on stage, of course, the sound of the piano is different. But when you are now sitting in the audience, how do you perceive those pianos? How do you listen to them? We've got 4 different pianos on this year's competition. Of course, we've got a Steinway, we've got a Yamaha, which has been on the competition for many years, and now more recent additions, which are the Kawai and the Fazioli. So how would you describe the differences in the sound of these pianos from a pianist's point of view, but in the audience, not when you are playing?
I was sitting I was listening to 6 people altogether on the audience, and I was sitting in 2 different points. And to be honest, I can't still compare really the sound of particular pianos, but I think not only the piano sounds different, with every participant, it's the same piano can sound completely different. We had an opportunity to listen to 2 Russian girls playing the same
Sisters, actually.
Yeah, sisters, yeah. Playing the same piano, which sounded completely different. So it's quite interesting how it is.
Chopin himself was very sensitive to this, and he wrote, or he shared with his pupils that when you are out of shape, you just want to impress people with a big sound, you choose the Erard piano. But when you are in a small room, wanting to be more intimate, and you also feel you can play better that day, probably the Pleyel is best. So would you say today, if you just want to impress the jurors with a big sound, you choose the Steinway, you know, the Horowitz piano, and...
I don't know.
No?
I would have to check every every piano. But I think the pianos during the Chopin era, and even later, the pianos were much more different than now. I think Yamaha, Kawai, Steinway, and many other brands are combining the same features. They are trying, all of them are trying to produce a perfect piano. And I think they are now very similar, in fact.
So the perfect piano for the perfect pianist?
Doesn't exist.
You told me when we spoke just before our interview about young pianists today being very professional when they approach a piano competition. They come to the competition very well prepared, program, piano. Some of them do yoga or other exercise to be in shape. They analyze who is on the jury and maybe see, you know, whether the program can be adjusted to make jurors happy. Do you see this as a growing trend? You were on the Chopin competition 10 years ago?
I think so. I think also during some different competitions, it was the same. We were just analyzing everything. Some people are really into analysis of everything and trying to build up a strategy. It's a fact. I think we shouldn't, but it's quite difficult when some people really want to win, not only to play, not only to be great musicians, not only to say something, but to win.
You need a competition manager to win the Chopin competition, do you think?
I think
an advisor.
It can be helpful, but I don't think it's a good way.
Now, you won several prestigious competitions. You won awards at the Vienna da Motta. You won the second prize at the Greek competition. So you're in a good position to tell us whether piano competitions make sense. Do they really influence a pianist's career? When we look at history, there are very few pianists, world famous, who did not win competitions. Mm-hmm. But from great pianists, we hear competitions are not so important. It's easy for them to say after they've won them, but how do you see this? Is it really a major influence, or are we seeing slowly the end of the piano competitions?
I don't know. Well, there are, I don't know how many competitions, piano competitions in the world, probably around 1,000. So it means that value of a particular competition will fall down. I don't know if in 20 or 50 years we'll need to have some competitions, or if the competitions will give concerts, because I think those two ways, concerts and competitions, started already to live different lives. Mm-hmm. Sometimes, maybe some years ago, I found out that after 1 or 2 competitions, I did not get any concert, but I got 2 or 5 invitations for another competition.
Right.
So it was quite funny. Of course, after big competitions like Chopin competition, like Moscow, Brussels, like Fort Worth, and probably some other, there are concerts, and this is the most important part of the prize, because they can, the winners can really use the prize and be musicians. But, well, on the other hand, I think competitions are not good. I think we could agree, because it kills, every competition kills somehow music. But is it a good way that we are now trying just to advertise ourselves. I think it's even worse sometimes. So if I were to choose between competitions and Facebook profiles, I would choose competitions.
Okay. Now, it's a question we ask everybody, but I'm curious to hear your view. How is the Chopin competition different from others in the world in the sense of the atmosphere of what is happening backstage, of what you experience? You went to many, so you can tell us, is there anything really special about being in Warsaw in October?
I think it's very well organized. It's one of the things that is very important here, that we felt that if you need something, it is already there. I mean, someone had thought about it before. It means that it's really well organized. But most of the biggest competitions are like that. I think the atmosphere is usually quite friendly between participants. But of course, the kind of pressure on the Polish pianists, I think, is quite big, because I was joking usually that if I play something wrong abroad, they will tell me it in English, and the cases are two. Or I will not understand it, or it will not hit me. If it is said in Polish, and some of the people who are making comments, and nearly everyone is making comments, if they say it's not good, I feel it's not good. That's the biggest difficulty for us, I think.
So you took part in the Chopin competition 10 years ago. You chose not to do it again, but I'm sure you got something out of the competition. So I wanted to ask you what has been the one thing that you remember that you've learned by competing in the Chopin?
It's also a joke. I'm always saying that I learned that if you play a wrong note in the National Philharmonic during the Chopin competition and you are recorded by 7 cameras and 27 microphones, it's not the end of your life. And that's one of the most important things which I remember from the
So is that your advice to the young pianists who are competing now? Just relax. It's
if they can, of course they should. I know it's incredibly difficult, but I think if they can be themselves, if they can just listen to what they are doing, it would be really great, because they all are really fantastic pianists.
Szczepan, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching this interview.